All right, what is up, guys? VV back with another video, and today we got a special one. We got a beginner's guide to building on a budget in the One Piece TCG. This video will be geared more towards beginners and players who are trying to get into the game. However, for the more veteran players, please share your thoughts in the comment section below. What deck did you use to get into the game? What do you recommend? Because this is just going to be a beginner's guide. I won't go over every single option, just some good options to get some players started with decks that aren't just going to fall apart and just, not be good, right? You don't want to have a bad experience as your first, in your game, or in the game for your, your first interaction. First impressions are everything, right? We've heard this. Okay, so let's go ahead and hop right into it, guys, because we are going to go over a deck for each color. And I only went over the mono-colored decks for this video. I'm only going over the mono-colored decks. No dual-color decks. Maybe I'll save that for another video in the future. But for now, we're just going to go over the, the kind of the more intro, or the, beginner-friendly decks. So, okay, this is just an alphabetical order, by the way. I didn't do this in any kind of numerical order or by price or anything like that. Excuse me. I'm just doing this in alphabetical order, so it's going to go black, blue, and green, I think green, and so on. Yeah. Okay. So first up, we have black. Building black on a budget. I have the date down at the bottom left. All this was done on one day, so I wanted to keep the prices as good as possible. And just to go over that real quick, I did not include the leader. I did not include the leaders in the price, but I think every leader is going to cost you like 5 cents. They're extremely cheap. You could even borrow one, proxy them. You can kind of do what you want when you're getting into the game when it comes to the leader. Like I said, you could literally proxy a leader if you needed to, like just print this card out and put it in a sleeve. Okay, it's not recommended. Just buy the card for 5 cents, right? But you get the point. All right, so let's go ahead and go into it. So this is the first deck. I'm going to read through every single deck, and then I'm going to talk about it afterwards. And then I'm going to have some upgrade potential after each main deck is featured. One more thing before I get started. Notice the prices here. This is not how much it costs per card. This is how much it costs for however many I have. So for example, this first card, Suru, I have 4 in the deck, so it's going to cost you $3.60. So, in other words, this card costs about 90 cents per card. You see what I'm saying? Now, on the next slide, I do have to kind of jump ahead just a little bit. It's the opposite, where it's actually, I don't have, hang on one second, guys. I got a phone call. Let me tell them I'll call them right back. Okay. All right, so on this next slide here, it is individual cards. This is how much each individual card costs, right, for the upgrade section, okay? But in the actual deck itself, like I have here, this is how much each spot costs, right? So for 4 Subarus, it was $3.60. For 3 Spandams, it was 60 cents. For 4 Brandes, and this is in English, in American currency, okay, just to get that out of the way. So, sorry guys, if you're from Europe, you'll have to do a little bit of translation in your mind. Okay, and then one more thing. For every list, I wanted to make sure it was well under $100, right? I wanted every deck list under $75, and I was able to achieve that because you figure if you're going to buy these up off of TCG Player, which is the website I used to get these prices at this date of 8/16, whenever you order this, you're going to have to also pay some shipping and handling, right? Or the shipping tax, right? But that is something you can't really get around, right? The actual the shipping fees. Sometimes you can. Some people will say if you can spend $5 or more at their store on tcgplayer.com, they'll pay for shipping. So I have all that worked in here so that you should be able to stay under $75 for every one of these decks. Okay, all right. So moving forward, so this is the list. Let me go ahead and talk through it real quick. 4 Surus, 3 Spandam, 4 brand new. So you see we got a lot of searcher power. And for those who don't know, Suru is just a 2K counter. That's the main idea there. 4 Fukuro, 4 Isuka, 1 Kobe, 4 Tashigis, 2K counter, 4 Khalifa, another 2K counter, 4 Kumadori, 3 Momonga, 3 Kaku, 3 Bluno, 3 Sakazuki, 3 Isho, and 3 Impact Waves. So, and real quick, I based every one of these lists that we're going to go over off of decks that made it into the top 32 of very large 100-person plus tournaments up to 1,000-player tournaments. This was an actual Rob Lucci deck that did very well, that I had to modify a few cards out of and mix and match a little bit and make it a more affordable to a newer player. Okay, so right away, this deck is it's pretty aggressive. Remember, you know, Rob Lucci's going to be the leader for this, right? Where you can discard 2 cards, your turn once per turn. You're going to be able to discard 2 cards from your hand, and then when an opponent's character is KO'd, you can set this leader as active. So you have your Kobis to KO, you have Kakus, you have Sakazukis, you have way to reduce cost in Isho, Tashigi, and Suru. You have Searchers. This is just, I will say this, now I probably have a small amount of bias here, because I do play black decks. That's like my main color in the game. I think this is an excellent beginner-friendly deck to learn, because you have ways to KO characters, right? You have defenders in here to stabilize. You have cards that are very strong triggers, like Impact Wave. And you have lots of Searchers, you have lots of 2K counters, and this will be a good deck to kind of teach you about keywords and about tribal affinity, where, like, for example, Spandam, this character here that I have the mouse hovering over, he can only search for half the deck. Half the deck is CP, the other half is Navy. Not exactly half, but you get my point. It's about half and half. And Branu, the card right next to it, he can only search for the Navy cards, whereas Spandam can only search for the CP cards. So this would be a great intro deck. It is a little more aggro to mid-range, just to give an idea. You know, it's definitely more aggro to mid-range style deck, but has a lot of control features in it as well. So this is a good deck. And then if you end up enjoying this, or if you're committed to this and you have a larger budget you want to spend, well, these are some upgrades you can start looking at. Now, like I said, these prices here are individual card prices. So you see where it can start getting expensive. And one more thing I want to mention too is if there are any cards in here you like better, or you have extra cards of already laying around, of course, go up in them, right? If you have 4 Sakazukis already, play with 4 Sakazukis, maybe drop a Kobe, right? You guys get my idea. It's all about, you know, working with whatever financial constraints that you have to deal with, right? And collection restraints, right? Whatever you have available to you. So, you know, this is just a guideline. You can always change my list and make it even cheaper if you want to. You can remove all the Sakazukis and just go up Kobis, right? You can absolutely do that. So don't be afraid to change this list. It's just a, you know, it's kind of just a, it's not quite like a tabula rasa idea, like, but it's at least a good building block to start from. Okay? All right, so let's keep going. Don't want to spend too much time on it. And like I said before, this is individual prices, and this is for all of the cards listed prices, like for 4 here, 1 here, 3 here. Okay? All right, so that's for black. Black, the good news about if you do decide to go black is there are very good upgrade options. Like, this deck is very solid as is, but there are great upgrade options looming if you're really serious about going this color. 4-cost Kuzan, 10-cost Kuzan, and 4-cost Borsalino. These are just, you can slap these cards in the place of pretty much any of these cards, and it's going to be an upgrade to your deck. Okay? All right, so next we got blue on a budget. This is Doflamingo. His ability, for those who do not know, is you have to attach 2 Dawn to him, and you attack, and then you pay 1, so it's 3 Dawn altogether, and then you get the chance to reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a 7 Warlords of the Sea type character card with a cost of 4 or less, you may play that card, okay? Rested for free, right? Well, you know, quote-unquote for free. So this deck is based around that, and this entire list is based around the Doflamingo deck that just won, excuse me, a Gen Con. It had won just around the time of me recording this, or right before, of course. So let me just read through the list real quick. You got 4 Kaya, 1 Trafalgar Law, the 1 cost, 2 of the 3-cost Boa Hancock. This is a blocker with a trigger, play this card. 4 Perona, 4 Alvida, 4 Doflamingo, 4 Teach, 4 Kuma, 2 Hancock, the 4-cost blocker, 4 Gecko Moria, the one that has the effect, 4 of the vanilla Gecko Moria, 4 Pacifista, 3 Dracula Mihawks, 1 Gum Gum Rain, 2 Love Beams, and 3 3000 Worlds. This list ended up being pretty cheap, right? Which is nice, right? Let's try to keep everything in mind here, you know, like with the black deck was 62 and the blue deck is 57. So these decks are well under $100, and you can take these to local tournaments and do fairly well. I think you'll do pretty well with them. I'm not saying you'll win the tournament, especially if it's your first tournament. You know, you do need experience to get better and better at the game, but this will definitely get you in the right direction, right? So so this is Kaya is your 2K searcher and Alvida is your other 2K searcher. We're going to be talking in a second about upgrades for this Alvida slot, because one of the 2K options is a little expensive, but it really does help the deck, and we'll talk about that in a second. You've got a Trafalgar Law blocker here. That's all it's for. This is a pretty defensive package where you want to generate as much momentum and tempo as possible from your leader's ability by cheating out these characters. And you're going to do that with Perona and with Doflamingo. You're going to look at your top 5 cards, and you're going to arrange them so that you take into consideration when you draw a card and when you're going to play one of these 7 Warlords of the Sea type characters that cost 4 or less. And notice everything in this deck is 4 or less, except for Dracula Mihawk. He's kind of your boss character, right? Okay. And as always, if you want 4 Dracula Mihawks, or you can afford them, or you already have them, well, by all means, go up to 4 and maybe drop down one of these other cards, like a Teach, right? That's the whole idea there. Now, if you are intending to upgrade the deck, there are 2 very, very strong upgrade options for the deck, and that would be Dracula Mihawk and Jinbei. Now, I'm going to preface this right now with saying the reason this card is so expensive on the right, the Jinbei, excuse me, it has to do with the fact that it is a promotional level, a promotional rarity card. The rarity on it is promo. And it just won a big tournament. So it's kind of inflated. It's very inflated. And I would, you know, yes, is this card extremely good? Absolutely it is. It has the keyword we want. It has the power we want. It stays in the cost we want. It has a counter on it. On KO, it has an effect. Absolutely. But you can build the deck around it. You can build the deck while going around this card. You don't have to include it. Okay. Now, this card, on the other hand, I think is much more of a serious upgrade. You kind of do need this card, in my personal opinion. It has the keywords, it has the stat line, it has a 2K counter, it has a very relevant effect, and it, you know, it matches everything we just said about this card, and it's a 2K counter, right? So I do think this card is, if you're really serious about trying a blue deck out, well, I should say a Doflamingo deck, I would really consider grabbing the Dracula Mihawks. And it just replaces the Alvida, by the way. It just straight up replaces this 2K counter right here. Whereas if you were to grab Jinbei, which I think most lists were running 3 of the Jinbei, you would just swap out the Teaches. Just remove all 4 of these Teaches and throw in 3 Jinbeis. It's that simple to change around. Okay, but like I said, I don't recommend going out and buying this if you're just trying a deck for the first time. You need to be very, very serious about playing it. And even if you are very serious about playing it, I think you can get around this. Because placing up to 1 character the cost of 3 or less at the bottom of its owner's deck, that is actually very limiting, because it's on KO. They can choose to ignore it, and it can only hit something that's 3 or less, which is not irrelevant, but I think you guys get what I'm trying to say there. You can, by all means, play around not having this card if you still want to do decent. Okay. Maybe when you're considering trying to win some type of championship, like some type of treasure cup or a very, very big tournament, then you might want to get really serious and consider something like this option for this deck. Okay. All right, moving on to green next. So this deck is built around Eustace Captain Kidd. And this is a 5,000 power. They're all 5,000 power, 5 life. By the way, I probably should have mentioned that in the beginning. But his effect is activate on your main once per turn, pay 3, so it costs 3. You may trash 1 card from your hand and set this leader as active. Sorry if you guys can't read that. I know the card's a little small. Excuse me. But the idea is you're going to pay 3 and trash a card from your hand, and you could stand him up. Very powerful effect. And this deck is kind of geared around, you know, it's kind of geared around winning the game off of this effect in the end, right? So keep that in mind. So this deck was actually very cheap, with the exception of like 2 cards, Trafalgar Law and Pump Gibson. They're just pricey right now. Eustace Captain Kidd for 4 8-cost cards. That's really not bad. $8 for cards of that level, of that power level. Beige was a little pricey, but everything else was very low costed. So I did have to go down to 2 Trafalgar Law. All right, so let me go ahead and go through the list. We're running 3 of Momonosuke, or however you say that. I think that's how you say it. 3 Momo, 4 Beige, 4 Bonnie, 4 Killer, 4 Apu, 4 Izo, 2 Shashi, 4 Raizo, 2 Beppo. I also want to say that there's a card that could have gone here. It's a 2K. This is really just a 2K counter, but there could have been a card called Tony Chopper. That's a green film card. I think it's a film Straw Hat Crew that could have gone here as well. Anyway, 3 Yamato. Excuse me. Technically speaking, any 2K can go here. That's kind of the point that I'm trying to say for the beginners. Okay, 3 of the Yamato, 2 of the Trafalgar Law. Excuse me. 2 X-Drake, 1 Basil Hawkins, 3 Krieg, 4 Captain Kidd, and 4 Punk Gibson. Okay, so this list has lots of searcher power in Bonnie and Momo. It has lots of defenders in Beige, Trafalgar Law, Shashi, Killer. I think that's the main, and Eustace Captain Kidd is basically a defender. And then it just has lots of stabilizing power in cards like where is it? Trafalgar Law, where he's a blocker, but he's also bouncing things around. If you're looking to upgrade this list, or if you're very serious about this list, I would 100% recommend going up to 4 Trafalgar Laws just right away. And in order to do that with this list, you could just go down. You could really go down 2 Shashi. That's kind of what I replaced it with. Or you can go down 1 X-Drake, 1 Krieg. You know, kind of do what you want with it, right? But I will say that Trafalgar Law should be a 4 of in this deck, just to make that very clear. But again, we're trying to stay on a budget. This one ended up being, I think, the most expensive one at $69, and it was really just the Trafalgar Law and the Punk Gibson. Yeah, those were the most expensive. Everything else was very well costed. So you'll have to definitely make some considerations there. But yeah, so this deck looks to tap down opposing characters with cards like Yamato and even Izo, and then smashing into them with your leader, and just slowly whittling down your opponent, getting a card draw engine going with Bonnie, Raizo, Killer, and then you just beat them down slowly over time with your leader. That's kind of the entire point of this deck. It's an Outlast attrition style deck, and it's very powerful, guys. It's a very fun deck to play as well, and I would recommend it's a very beginner friendly deck. Excuse me. If you're leaning more towards control, I would say this is kind of up that alley. Not in the same respects as a game like Magic, but in a game like One Piece, this is a very controlling style deck. And I should have also mentioned that about blue. This is very much of a mid-range tempo deck. Okay? Whereas this green deck is much more of a controlling deck. Okay? And it's very good at establishing board control with cards like Basil Hawkins, X-Drake, Krieg, all these blockers. You get to pick and choose what you want to take. Has a nice 4K counter in Punk Gibson. And yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Now for upgrades, this one's not so much upgrades as it is options. Like, there is another package this deck runs, and it might be a little bit cheaper in some ways, but maybe not. It kind of depends. You'll have to do a little bit of your own research. If you don't like the way this list is set up, there is a film package you can run, but it runs these Namis that are kind of expensive. But that will be very fun for beginners to play as well, because it takes the deck a little out of the control range and more into a tempo range. Because cards like Monkey D. Luffy here on the right and Brook, these cheat cards into play. That's kind of their ability, is when you play Monkey D. Luffy, well, now you can play another card from your hand for free that costs 4 or less that has the film or Straw Hat type crew types. And here's the Tony Chopper that I was talking about. Just a 2K counter Straw Hat film card that you can throw in the place of Beppo if you want to. That's up to you. Okay, so pretty straightforward here. And like I said, these aren't necessarily upgrades. The only upgrade I would make to this list is going up the 4 Trafalgar Laws. And you can do that by dropping a Krieg here, dropping a Drake here, dropping a Shashi here, however you want to do it. You know, it's kind of up to you. Okay, let's go on to the next list. So now we got purple on a budget. This is built around Magellan, the Impel Down engine. Technically speaking, there's only a few cards in this deck that require the Impel Down in the leader type. And those are, I believe it's just the Beast cards. They're on KO effects. I think everything else can technically be played in a, in any purple list if you want to. So someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. Okay, so real quick, Magellan's ability, his effect is your turn, once per turn, when a Dawn card is returned from the field to the Dawn deck, this leader gains plus 1,000 power during this turn. It is only on your turn. So let's go ahead and go through that list, keeping that in mind. We have 4 of Hannibal. This is a searcher. This is just a 1-cost searcher for Impel Down. Then we have Domino. This is just 4 Domino, 4 Shiki, 4 Sadie, 4 Khalifa, 2 Mino Rhinoceros, 4 Mino Koala, 2 Mino Rhinoceros, I think I said that right, and 4 Mino Koala, 4 X-Drake, 2 Douglas Bullet, 4 Magellan, 2 Queen, 4 King, 2 Kaido, 4 Hell's Judgment, and 2 Top Knots. Okay, very, very cheap list with almost no need for improvement. I think for the list that I took this from, I just put in 2 Mino Rhinoceroses for 2 Queens. Queens are about $10 a card right now, so that would put you up to $72. But that's really not bad for a fully completed and established list. I think that won a 32-person tournament. Excuse me. So very, very solid list that's extremely cheap. Very good to get into. And this deck is a little more on the mid-range side that has some control aspects in Magellan here. So there's Magellan the leader, and then there's Magellan the character. The character takes a Dawn away from your opponent. It takes a Dawn away from you as well, but remember, we want to take 1 Dawn away from us so we can swing for plus 1,000 with our leader, right? So he takes a Dawn away from you, turning on your leader for the turn, but takes a Dawn away from your opponent, slowing them down next turn. And he has an on KO effect where if he is destroyed, now your opponent has to lose 2 more Dawn. So it's kind of like a land destruction deck if you're like a Magic player, or you know, it's like a resource destruction deck if you play other card games. It's not broken or anything, but it's a very solid deck. My favorite word to use, solid. But yeah, so it runs 4 Hannibals. This is your searcher. It runs a lot of 2K counters. This is a very defensive deck. It runs 4 Shikis, 4 Sadies, 4 X-Drake, and 4, I think there was one more 2K counter, 4 Khalifa. Yeah. Excuse me. So with Sadie, you have a little bit of tempo potential. So it is a 2K counter, but I think you kind of want to use it to cheat in these other characters and get board control. Because Sadie, this card that I'm hovering my mouse around, it can cheat in the Mino Rhinoceros and the Mino Koala. It can like throw them into play. So that's something to consider. And Koala is a defender. Okay. Very, very strong. And is Rhinoceros, I can't actually remember off the top of my head. Let me see something real quick. No, he is not. The Rhinoceros is not. In fact, there are 2 other Jailer Beasts we're going to talk about, and they kind of all have their own thing. One's, like, on KO, the Rhinoceros draws you 2 cards, and you trash a card. The Koala is a blocker that has on KO. You get, you know, a Dawn card back. And make sure that, yeah, you get you add a Dawn card for your Dawn deck and rest it on KO. And there are 2 others we're going to go over, the Minotaur and the Zebra, that have other effects as well. One's a double attack and one's a banish. Okay, so Hannibal's your searcher. Domino here's just a little 2-cost defender. Impel Down keyword, so it's searchable. Shiki's just a 2K counter. Sadie is just a 2K counter as well. My phone's blowing up. Gosh. Okay. Khalifa 2K counter. We talked about the 2 Mino cards here. These are 2 Jailer Beast cards. And they are Impel Down as well, so they're searchable for your Sadie combo. X-Drake is just a 2K counter. Douglas Bullet is just nice. He can tap cards down by Dawn -1, which is again, remember, that's very important for turning on our leader's ability. Okay, so very nice card there. Queen, like I said, is probably the only like legitimate upgrade in the deck. I would go up to 4 of those if possible, if you have the budget for it. They're about $10 a piece. King is good removal. Kaido's a good finisher with removal. Magellan we already talked about. Hell's Judgment is an absolutely incredible event. And Top Knot is a nice way to bounce cards back. And it does have a minus Dawn effect, so you're going to be able to turn on your leader with it. Excellent. Okay, now there aren't really upgrades for this list other than the Queens, like I said, but there are other options you can consider. Like, for example, this Impel Down stage for Impel Down. It's a nice way to, okay, this is like a searcher, right? You may trash 1 card from your hand and rest the stage, look at 3 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 Impel Down type card and add it to your hand. These are the other Jailer Beast characters if you want to mess around with that idea. Yeah, that's always a very real idea to mess around with it, or if maybe you don't have access to some of these other cards, you just want to try it real quick, you can just toss these in to give it a whirl. Some more defensive options. If you want to mess around with this, you've got Blast Breath and Thunder Bogwub, just very strong defensive options. And, of course, King over here. There's a 6-cost King and a 7-cost King. I want to mention that. They're both Animal Kingdom Pirates. Whoops. They're not searchable, with Impel down, but that's okay. But it does have a Dawn -2 effect, and this, if you're in an environment where there's a lot of Law players, a lot of Zoro players, the 7-cost King might be slightly better. Maybe you want to run 1 or 2 of these, because it can KO up to 2 characters, a character that costs 3 or less, or a character that costs 2 or less as well. So just something to consider. These are, again, this is kind of like how who was it? Green was. These aren't really upgrades, quote unquote, but these are other options you have access to. Okay, let's move on to red. So next up we have red. Red on a budget here. I have 2 leaders shown here because you can literally run either one that you want to. Some people will argue that Zoro is slightly better than Luffy, and that's very understandable. But it's really up to you at the end of the day for this one. If you're just getting into the game, just play the leader you want to play, right? So both of these guys are Supernova Straw Hats, so they both have the same keyword for leaders. They both have 5 life, they both have 5,000 power, and both of their effects are based around buffing your characters. Now Zoro can buff more characters, but Luffy can do more tricks with Dawn. Okay, so it's kind of up to you there. So here's the list. This one's kind of all over the place because there were a lot of 1s and 2-ofs because of certain, because of all kind of stuff. I built this list here based around decks that were winning and then having to make replacements where necessary. I'm sure some of the more veteran, experienced players see right away this is not the normal Zoro you'd see in a deck like this. This is it's still a good Zoro, but we'll talk about the other Zoro in a minute. It's a little too pricey to have in a budget style deck. So there were 2 cards that were pricey that you just kind of have to bite the bullet on if you're going to go red. Otama being one of them, and then Nami. Now, technically Luffy as well, but he's kind of more of the aggro feel, but you're starting to see that all over the place now. So let's kind of run through this real quick. 4 Otama, 2 Makino, 2 Chopper, 4 Nami, this is the Searcher Nami, 2 Buggy, 4 Dadan, 4 of the Sanji, it's just 2k counter, 4 Nico Robin, 4 Roronoa Zoro, 2 Uda, 2 Brook, 3 Frankie, 3 Monkey D. Luffy, 1 Edward Newgate, which is fine, right? Because that's, at the time of me recording this, that's all you can run in the West. There's a restriction on Newgate and Radical Beam. Okay, and you can only have 1 of those in your deck. Well, perfect. We'll run exactly 1 of each. 1 Diable Jambe, 2 Gum Gum Red Hawk, 4 Jet Pistol, and 1 Round Table. This came out to $61, pretty well priced. And again, always tack on $10 in shipping for any of this if you're going to order it from something like TCG Player, because it is what it is, right? You can't really get around it. That's why I kind of wanted to make the list, well under $100. So that way, there's no way this would cost you over $100 unless prices change or fluctuate over time. And I should mention that right now, if the prices if the prices change and fluctuate to an extreme degree, like where one of these cards ends up being way more, just message in the comment section below, and I'll be able to update the list. You know what I mean? Or at least send you here's what I recommend in the place of X card. You know what I mean? So never be afraid to comment in the comment section below. Okay, so what next? So just to go over this list, you have 10 2K counters in Otama, Makino, and Sanji, but Otama doubles over in this deck. Red has a lot of power manipulation and ways to destroy characters based off of power. That's what Jet Pistol's all about. For those who don't know, who might be newer players, Jet Pistol KOs a character that has 6,000 power or less. Well, with Otama, she reduces someone's power by 2,000. So with this combo, you can KO an 8k or less, right? An 8,000 power or less. Or there's a single round table where if you get that, okay, for 4, you can reduce someone's power by 10,000. Very powerful effect. Diable Jambe is a nice way to get unblockable in characters. Luffy can already get it by himself, the actual character here, the 5+ character. But Diable Jambe can give it to any Straw Hat Crew character or leader. So do make sure you're lining up your keywords. This is a great deck to learn about keywords. For example, Nami here, she is a searcher. She can look at 5 cards from the top of the deck, but it can only be Straw Hat characters, right? So that'll teach you how to, go through that. Buggy only looks up red events. Dadan only looks up red 1-cost characters. So in this deck, you can actually look up, Buggy, Nami, Chopper, Makino, or Otama. Okay, someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, other than that, you've got lots of good board presence cards like Zoro here, the 3-cost 5,000 power Zoro. This card has Attach 1 Dawn, by the way, Attach 1 Dawn, so that would go really well with Monkey D. Luffy. You attach one Dawn to him, and now he's a 7,000. He goes from 6,000 to 7,000 power. And on your opponent's turn, he's still 6,000 power because the Dawn times 1 effect is not your turn only. Uda is a nice card to grab any of these cards before her back from the trash. So say you had to use a 2K counter, well, you can grab it back with Uda. If one of your better characters got destroyed, like Zoro or Nico Robin, you can grab it back with Uda, from the trash, that is. So just a nice utility card. Brooke has got some good power manipulation. Frankie's just a nice 4-cost vanilla. We talked a little bit about Luffy. He's a rush card. And this is definitely an aggro list. For those who are listening, who don't know, this is more of an aggro list, right? So definitely keep that in mind when you're trying to build your first deck or when you're thinking about building your first deck. Okay. Whoops. Zoomed in. I don't know what I did. Oh, gosh. Now it's like freezing up on me. There we go. Okay. So for upgrades for this deck, there are 4 major options I want to talk about. And that's without getting into like an Edward Newgate style deck. That's another leader. I'm not even going to talk about him. I might save him for another video. But if you're trying to upgrade the deck here that I've made, these are just straight upgrades. You can just add them pretty much anywhere you want to, and it's an upgrade. But they're very pricey, as you see. Remember, in my upgrade slots, these are per card. So $13.25 a card for Gordon. This is another card where it got locked behind the promotional rarity. Right, so that's pretty rough. Marco and Zoro, these have been pretty pricey the whole time. And then guard points they're a little high costed, you know, for what they do. But I think they're in the starter pack, so they're a little bit rare now. Okay, so if you want to include the Zoro, you can literally, every Zoro you get in the future, you can just replace one of these other Zoros right here. Okay, for guard point, you can literally start throwing in. You could start throwing in the guard points for the Red Hawks, actually. And I didn't even talk about Red Hawk real quick. Let me get that out of the way. It's just a nice 2-cost, 4,000 counter, right? And it also has a KO effect, I think, of a character that's 4,000 power or less. It's a really nice card, but realistically, you might want guard point there. You just kind of want like a real cheap defensive event. Okay, or you could add more events if you want to go more the buggy route, move towards Ace, which, again, I'm not going to talk about all this. There are some other options, though. But guard point's nice. Marco's a nice card. You can replace Frankie's with a Marco, or you could probably go down one Monkey D. Luffy for a Marco, go down a Nico Robin for a Marco. It's kind of up to you. Maybe even down a Brook if you want to. Okay, so as you get to these, I would recommend 3 to 4 in the deck if you can afford it. Again, just if you can afford it. It's not necessary, though, to get started. And then Gordon is power manipulation. This card is very powerful. It's a 1-cost 2K. It's a 1-cost, so Dedan can search it up, and it minuses 3,000 to the power of a character. So this will allow you to just, you know, run over big blockers or just, you know, do KO effects with something like Nico, Robin, or Jet Pistol. Very, very powerful. Okay. All right, and that's about it for the upgrades for Red. Again, there are other directions you can build with Red, like with Whitebeard or Ace, but I'm mainly focusing on just Zoro and Luffy for the starters. All right. And last but not least, we have Yellow. Excuse me. Same idea with this leader. These are both 5,000 power, 5 life leaders that are Big Mom Pirates type. That's the main thing. So these lists are completely interchangeable with either leader, just like the red lists were. All right, so let's go ahead and hop into this. Now they both have to do with looking at life cards, but so Katakuri is a slightly more aggressive option. And Charlotte Linlin, I would say, is a little more mid-range to controlling style. All right. So with this list, it's kind of the same idea as green, where everything's pretty easily costed. Like, you can definitely afford most of the stuff, you know, typically speaking, with a few exceptions. Like Cracker and Linlin are pretty pricey, and some of the upgrades we're going to look at are very pricey. But as far as the core of the deck goes here, it's really not bad. $61 to get all this stuff here, and you're going to be, you know, really, I think you're going to be doing a lot of damage on the local scene, wherever your locals are, if you're playing the deck properly, of course. So let me go ahead and run through the list. 4 Strusen, 4 Puddings. This is the Searcher Pudding. 4 Sanji, 4 Pudding, the 2K counters. So that's why, you know, you got to specify with the Puddings. You run both at 4 of, though. 3 Brulee. This card was a little pricey. 4 of Peckhams. He's just a 3-cost 5K vanilla. 4 of your Crackers, 4 of Opera. By the way, Cracker can also be replaced with Smoothie for the beginner players. I should have mentioned that, and that card is way cheaper. If you want to knock the price down, you can go Charlotte Smoothie in the place of this. Okay, 4 Opera, 2 Katakuri, the 4 cost, 3 of the Shirahoshi 5 cost, 4 of your Yamato. This is not a, this is like one of the only, the Shirahoshi and Yamato are some of the only cards, if not the only cards in the deck that are not Big Mom Pirates. Yeah. Actually, it is literally other than Sanji, the Vinsmoke family Sanji. But this is just a 5-cost 7k power vanilla. 2 of your 7-cost Charlotte Linlin and 4 of your 10-cost Charlotte Linlin. It's worth it. If you want to play yellow, just bite the bullet and just buy at least 2 Charlotte Linlins. That'll run you about $8. But I would probably grab all 4 personally. That's just me. So there you go. Technically speaking, if you wanted to reduce the cost even more on a deck like this, you could just go down 2 of these Charlotte Linlins and shave $8 off the top of this and go 2 Katakuris in the place of it. And you could shave off, you know, another $11 and just go 4 Smoothies in the place of Cracker. Okay, so just something to consider. I'll just mention one more thing while I'm at it. Charlotte Brûlée you can technically replace with like a Shirley, which is a mermaid card, but I think Brûlée definitely serves a very specific role in the deck. Now, that's for downgrading if you need to make it more budget. Now let's talk about upgrading. You can go up to 4 Brûlées, of course. That's probably the main thing I would talk about on the board here. I'd go up to 4 Brûlées and go down 1 Peckhams, or Pickhams, however you say that. And I run 4 Thunderbolt, by the way, if I didn't already mention that. But here are the upgrades. Perospero and Katakuri are really the only upgrades that are not in the list. And the way that I would work them in, if you get the budget for it, or if you have them laying around, or you can borrow them from a friend, I would just take out the Yamatos. I would take out all 4 Yamatos and probably go up. I would go up 1 Katakuri per Yamato, right? So if you have 2 Katakuri 8 costs, this one right here, if you have 2 of these, then I would go down 2 Yamatos and up 2 Katakuris. A very easy swap in and out there, right? And then likewise with Perospero, I would make it a 1-to-1 translation of Peckhams here, or Peckhams, however you say his name, just a straight translation, right? And then if you do need to go up to 4 Brûlée, or if you're trying to fit in 4 Brûlée, I would just go down a Shirahoshi and go up a Brûlée, or go down a Katakuri and go up a Brûlée. It's kind of up to you, however you want to do that. But yeah, so that's it, guys. I really hope this video was helpful to the newer players out there. By all means, take a picture of whatever screen you need to, and use it for you know, making your own list, right? This is all of this information. The prices are from tcgplayer.com. So if you need to, things are going to change, right? It is a live market. So as people buy more and more cards, the price might go up and down, or if people don't buy in a while, prices could go down. I think you get the point, right? If you have any questions, by all means, please just ask away. And I think that's about it. But let me summarize one more time. As an overarching idea, these are the styles of each deck that I built, or I didn't quite build every one of these lists by myself. I looked at very high placing tournament lists and made some revisions to make them budget, right? So just know that, you know, it's coming from a good place, right? You're not just, I didn't just randomly throw some decks together, right? I looked at decks that were winning. You know, I looked at decks that were winning tournaments, and then I just made some modifications to make it more affordable for the newer players, the beginning players. And so if you're looking for more of an aggro style deck, I would recommend going Zoro and potentially even Katakuri. And Lucci and Magellan can be played more aggro, but I think they're more of a mid-range style deck, right? So red and yellow are going to be good for aggro. And then on the cusp of aggro, you have Magellan and Rob Lucci. Going into the mid-range, I think you're going to be much better off with Doflamingo, Magellan, Lucci, and Big Mom, and technically Katakuri as well, right? And I should have said Luffy, by the way, as well when I was talking about Zoro. Sorry, guys. So for mid-range again, Doflamingo, Magellan, Katakuri, Big Mom, Lucci. That would be the majority of the lists here. The only real aggro list technically are the two red lists, the Luffy and Zoro lists. But like I said, with the right pull, Katakuri, Lucci, and Magellan can be pretty aggressive. Okay, and Eustace Kid can be as well if you go the film package. It can be a little more aggro, but it definitely is, I would never consider it aggro. It's more on the mid-range side. And then lastly, if you're going for a more mid-range to control feel, that's where I would look into going black, green, or yellow. These three in particular. A little bit blue. Blue is not far off from it, and it can be played in a very controlling manner. So, you know, yeah. All right, guys, if you have any questions, by all means, just ask away in the comment section below. For the veteran players, if I missed something, by all means, share with us. If I messed something up, you know, correct me if I was wrong anywhere. Excuse me. Anything else I might have missed. This was a fun video to put together, but I will say this one probably took the longest of all the videos I did so far, having to research all of these cards and do the math on it and all that good stuff. Okay. All right, guys. Well, I hope you all enjoyed. Please leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out more than you know. And thanks for watching. And until next time, guys, peace.